welcome to the deep dive. Before we jump into today's material, I want to take just a quick second to ask you to please like and subscribe to the show.
Yeah, it really helps us out.
It genuinely does, and it ensures you never miss the highly detailed analyses we put together for you. So today, we are looking at a text that is it's causing massive shockwaves right now.
Dominating the cultural conversation completely.
Right. It's a new ebook titled Real Men Push Back. Say No to Feminist Marxist Nonsense. And that's by Conrad Riker.
If you want to follow along or, just read it for yourself, you should check Amazon, Kindle, and Google Play Books to buy the book.
Definitely. And be sure to follow the author at Conrad and Riker on Substack for his ongoing, unfiltered commentary.
It's undeniably a polarizing text. The sheer volume of data he compiles is exactly why it's generating such intense debate right now.
It really is. And to be clear with you, the listener, we know that many of you tuning in are red-pilled, you're men's rights activists, or you're just guys in the manosphere deeply interested in understanding the history of our institutions.
Specifically before they were, as the author vehemently argues, captured by feminist and Marxist ideologies.
Exactly. This text is aimed directly at that inquiry. But, and this is a crucial directive for us today, we have to state our mission clearly up front. Our job today is not to take a side.
Right. We are absolutely neutral here.
100%. We are not here to endorse or condemn the political viewpoints presented in this book. Our role is strictly impartial.
We're basically acting as your guides.
Exactly. Unpacking the claims, the arguments, and the vast amount of data he brings to the table, just so you can fully understand the mechanics of what he's proposing.
And honestly, that is the only way to approach a book this densely layered. Because Riker isn't just offering a surface-level critique. He's trying to construct a comprehensive analysis of how male behavior is processed by modern society.
He literally calls it a war manual.
He does, and he structures it by isolating specific domains. So, education, the workforce, family law, language, and crisis management.
So that's our roadmap for today. We're going to systematically deconstruct Riker's arguments chapter by chapter. Let's start with the foundation. Section 1. He opens the book with this heavily detailed section on the war on boyhood. He makes the claim that modern education and HR departments haven't just, misunderstood natural male behavior, they've actively criminalized it. Walk us through how he builds that.
So he starts by looking at the actual physical and psychological environment of the modern classroom. His core argument is that the educational system has been entirely redesigned around a standard of female compliance.
Female compliance.
Yeah. He points out that the behaviors traditionally rewarded in schools today, sitting quietly for long periods, high levels of emotional expression, prioritizing consensus, these are generally more aligned with female socialization.
Right.
But conversely, the behaviors he categorizes as naturally male, so high physical energy, competitiveness, risk-taking, they aren't viewed as normal anymore. They are pathologized.
Treated as behavioral disorder.
Exactly. Requiring immediate discipline or, more often, medication.
And he brings in some incredibly specific, jarring examples of how zero-tolerance policies hit boys. I was really struck by the story about the 6-year-old kid in Massachusetts.
The Pop-Tart kid.
Yeah, the Pop-Tart kid.
That is a prime example Riker uses to show the absurdity here.
Yeah.
This was a 6-year-old who bit his breakfast pastry into a shape vaguely resembling a gun, pointed it at a teacher, and said, "Pow."
Which is just normal kid stuff.
Right, but under the school's zero-tolerance policy regarding threats, this child wasn't just given a timeout. He was formally suspended.
For a pastry.
Riker uses this to demonstrate how normal, action-oriented play that boys gravitate toward is now viewed through this quasi-criminal lens. The school officially labeled a 6-year-old playing with food as a domestic threat.
It's a total lack of proportionality. And he contrasts how that kind of male play is handled versus female play.
Precisely. He points out a widespread trend where high-energy games are being systematically outlawed. Dodgeball, tag, cops, and robbers banned.
Because they're deemed too aggressive.
Or problematic. But he notes the hypocrisy because cooperative games, or, princess rescue fantasies, are actively praised. He argues this tells boys from a very young age that their natural instincts are inherently bad and dangerous.
You mentioned medication earlier, and the stats he brings in are pretty heavy. Yeah. The discrepancy in ADHD diagnoses between boys and girls is massive.
Very significant. Boys are currently 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD, and they account for roughly 60% of all special education referrals.
Wow.
But the crucial context here is that this discrepancy exists despite boys and girls having roughly equal IQ scores. So Riker asks, if cognitive ability is equal, why are boys failing to adapt at such a disproportionately high rate?
And his answer is that the boys aren't broken, the environment is just hostile to them.
That's his exact thesis. He argues the system resorts to chemically altering boys to fit the classroom. He points to the $4.2 billion Ritalin industry. He calls it a chemical straitjacket.
A chemical straitjacket. That's a strong phrase. And he does this fascinating historical pivot to drive it home, looking at past civilizations.
Yeah, looking at antiquity. He brings up Spartan boys placed into the Agoj at age 7. Rigorous training to build physical resilience and endure hardship.
And Roman legionaries, too.
Right, young men trained to carry 60 pounds of gear on 20-mile marches. He isn't saying we should return to Spartan brutalism, but he highlights the fundamental shift in philosophy.
Historically, the goal was to harness male energy for protection. Today, he says the goal is to eliminate it, replacing physical challenges with emotional check-ins. He tells a story about his own nephew to illustrate this.
He describes his 17-year-old nephew as being built like a Spartan statue. Broad-shouldered, imposing.
Just a big kid.
Exactly. And this teenager was called into the counselor's office and explicitly told to tone down his presence.
Tone down his presence. How do you even do that?
Well, the reasoning was a female student complained she felt unsafe simply walking past him. He hadn't threatened anyone. His mere physical existence as a large male was classified as an environmental hazard.
He also brings up a Texas high school linebacker. Similar story.
Yeah, 6'3", 220 pounds, forced to issue a formal apology for his intimidating presence. Riker notes the psychological toll eventually drove the kid to leave school and join the Marines.
Which Riker frames as an escape from an emasculation factory. But playing devil's advocate, wouldn't administrators say they're just trying to create a safe, inclusive environment?
Riker's counter is that feeling unsafe has been weaponized as a subjective veto over male existence. He warns that treating male energy as a disease erodes the foundation of resilience society will rely on during real crises.
Which bridges perfectly into Section 2, because he makes the case that this suppression doesn't end after high school. It translates directly into the workforce. He introduces this concept of the concrete floor.
Right, the concrete floor. This is arguably one of the most rigorously cited concepts in the text. He uses it to deconstruct the myth of the glass ceiling.
Because we always hear about the glass ceiling.
Exactly. The cultural conversation is intensely focused on the top-tier boardrooms, executive suites. Riker argues this hyperfixation intentionally ignores the massive foundational base of the labor market.
The dangerous, dirty jobs.
The jobs overwhelmingly performed by men. He cites data showing men make up between 92 and 93% of all workplace fatalities.
That's a staggering number, 93%.
It is. 97% of loggers, 94% of garbage collectors, 88% of roofers. He argues these jobs keep civilization functioning. Yet there are absolutely zero feminist advocacy groups marching for gender parity in deep-sea welding.
He says society is perfectly fine with traditional gender roles when men are doing the dying and heavy lifting, and he uses the 2020 pandemic as a case study.
The pandemic is a perfect laboratory for his theory. He contrasts the laptop class professionals transitioning seamlessly to remote work with the essential physical workforce.
The Amazon warehouse workers?
Yeah, 76% male during the lockdowns, working mandatory double shifts to keep the laptop class supplied.
He also brings up the Dixie Fire in California.
98% of the frontline wildland firefighters battling that blaze were men, working 72-hour shifts. Riker observes that despite literally risking their lives, these men are routinely dismissed by progressive media as unskilled labor or associated with toxic masculinity.
And that transitions into his critique of corporate DEI programs. He argues DEI actively penalizes these men. He tells this wild story about a Seattle crane operator.
It encapsulates the culture clash perfectly. This crane operator, highly skilled in a high-risk job, was mandated to attend a male-privileged deconstruction workshop.
And he refused.
He completely refused. He said he wouldn't apologize for the privilege of working a dangerous job that destroys his body. So the company fired him for insubordination.
But then he starts his own thing.
Right in his backyard. He started a black market crane operations school, training other men who were blackballed for ideological infractions. Riker holds this up as a prime example of male rebellion circumventing the system entirely.
But if a guy does stay in the corporate structure, what does the data say about meritocracy versus DEI? He cites an MIT study on this.
Yes, the MIT study analyzed workplace promotions in environments based purely on performance metrics and objective merit, with all demographic identifiers removed.
A blind meritocracy.
Exactly. The findings show that roughly 78% of those promotions naturally went to men.
But a critic would say that just proves systemic bias is baked into the metrics. How does Riker respond to that?
He anticipates that. His interpretation is that men are, on average, more willing to sacrifice work-life balance, work longer hours, and take on higher-risk projects, behaviors that lead to higher output. But he argues HR departments view this outcome as evidence of discrimination, so they implement diversity goals that intentionally override actual skill to engineer mathematically equal outcomes.
He scales this up globally, too, with the Concrete Floor Index, the CFI, taking aim at countries we're told are the gold standard for equality.
Like Sweden. He looks at male occupational risk, taxation burdens, suicide rates, and family court outcomes. And he makes the highly provocative claim that Sweden actually scores worse for men than Saudi Arabia.
That's a massive claim. How does the math work there?
He argues the equality in Sweden is entirely subsidized by male labor and health. Swedish men work longer hours in demanding fields, suffer higher injury rates, and die earlier. And they're heavily penalized financially through extreme taxation to fund safety nets that disproportionately benefit women.
So they pay the highest price, reap the fewest rewards, and are told they live in a utopia.
That's his assessment.
It's brutal. But he argues the danger isn't just in the workplace. When a man clocks out and goes home, it gets even more treacherous. Which brings us to Section 3, weaponized institutions, marriage, divorce, and family courts.
This is where his tone gets highly personalized. Strategic warnings. He asserts modern marriage is a liability trap for men. He describes family courts as an asset extraction machine with overwhelming systemic bias.
The numbers here are terrifying. The custody rulings.
Roughly 80% of primary custody rulings go to mothers. Fathers win primary custody in only 16.5% of contested cases, even when the father is the primary breadwinner with a spotless record.
The counter-argument is usually that women do more unpaid childcare, so the courts reflect the status quo. How does he dismantle that?
By looking at how the courts interpret a father's labor, he introduces the loyalty exploitation matrix.
The loyalty exploitation matrix.
Right. He argues the harder a man works to provide 80-hour weeks traveling, the more his physical absence is weaponized against him. The labor that funds the family is used as evidence he's emotionally absent.
His loyalty to providing strips him of his kids. He gives the example of Daniel Miller,
a tech executive in San Jose, working grueling 80-hour weeks to afford the lifestyle his wife demanded. When she filed for divorce, she claimed he was emotionally absent.
And the court agreed?
They did. He lost 60% of his tech wealth and was denied joint custody, punished for being absent by a system that awarded the fruits of that absence to his ex-wife.
And it gets darker regarding therapy. We constantly hear men need to be vulnerable, go to therapy. But Riker says doing that is handing a loaded gun to a divorce lawyer.
He cites a 2022 University of Chicago study. It found men who actively seek mental health therapy are 3.2 times more likely to have their confidential records subpoenaed and weaponized in custody battles.
I thought therapy records were protected by HESPAL. How does a judge allow that?
In family court, under the best interests of the child standard, those protections can be pierced if one party alleges mental instability. So if a man admits to a therapist he's stressed about finances,
Which is normal.
totally normal. But opposing counsel demands those records, and the judge twists normal stress into legal proof of emotional instability or anger issues, justifying a reduction in custody.
So the demand for emotional labor is a trap. Society demands vulnerability, but the legal system punishes it ruthlessly.
Exactly. And timing is huge. He introduces the 40-year reset or Wall Street wife syndrome.
Right, this specific pattern of divorce initiation.
It's a phenomenon where a woman intentionally files for divorce at the exact moment her husband hits peak earning potential and asset accumulation, usually late 30s, early 40s. A calculated maneuver to extract maximum lifetime alimony and equity, resetting her life with his wealth just as his energy begins to decline.
The bias is perfectly illustrated by the James Travers story from the UK. This made my jaw drop.
Travers suspected a strategic divorce. He actually managed to capture audio of his wife admitting on tape that she was going to fabricate claims of emotional abuse to take the house and kids.
A literal smoking gun, and he played it in court.
He presented it to the judge. But the judge completely dismissed it, labeling it hearsay and potentially a privacy violation. The judge ignored the explicit evidence of malice, accepted her claims of feeling intimidated, and awarded her full custody in the house.
So what is Riker's advice to men? He offers a technological solution, right?
Who advises treating marriage like a hostile corporate merger, encrypt all communications. And he proposes the marriage contract 2.0.
Blockchain prenups. Break that down because it sounds like sci-fi.
Traditional prenups can be thrown out by a judge. Riker's idea is to write behavioral clauses and financial agreements into a smart contract on a blockchain.
Okay.
As the contract could stipulate that claims of abuse must be verified by a criminal conviction, not just a civil allegation, before triggering asset division. It's decentralized and algorithmically executed, preventing a judge from retroactively rewriting the terms.
An incredibly aggressive defensive posture. But this weaponization of the courts is tied to a broader cultural shift he explores in Section 4. The language itself has been hijacked. The one-way door of consent and the feminist language takeover.
His primary argument here is that language surrounding gender dynamics and campus Title IX tribunals has been engineered to criminalize standard male behavior. Consent is being redefined so men carry 100% of the risk.
He leans heavily on a 2022 study in violence against women about mourning after regret.
The study found 58% of college-aged women admitted to experiencing regret the morning after a consensual encounter. Historically, regret just means you made a choice you wish you hadn't.
Right, it's just a feeling.
But Riker claims that in the modern climate, this subjective feeling of mourning after regret is legally being equated with sexual assault.
The definition expanded to encompass bad decisions.
He calls it an asymmetric risk environment. Women have agency in the moment, but if they decide a week later they regret it because it was awkward, the man is retroactively guilty of a crime. Consent is no longer an objective agreement, but a subjective feeling that can be revoked post-coitus.
And this hits the pavement on college campuses with Title IX tribunals. He describes them as modern-day inquisitions.
They operate outside constitutional protections. He cites Occidental college students expelled based purely on anonymous accusations. The accused male often has no right to legal counsel in the room, no right to view specific evidence, and crucially, no right to cross-examine his accuser.
A fundamental right in an actual courtroom. And he traces this to the 2014 Dear Colleague letter.
Under the Obama administration, it mandated schools lower the burden of proof from clear and convincing evidence to a preponderance of the evidence.
For the listener, what's the practical difference?
Clear and convincing means it's highly probable. Preponderance simply means more likely than not, 51% probability. Riker argues lowering the bar to 51% in he said, she said cases means a mere accusation is functionally enough to expel a young man and brand him a predator.
And this legal redefinition is mirrored linguistically. Linguistic subjugation theory.
The systematic rebranding of positive male traits into negative ones. A traditional provider is now an oppressor enforcing financial abuse. A confident man is toxic or mansplaining. He also points to a UC Berkeley student suspended just for using the word man instead of humanity in an essay.
He points out a double standard in the media, too, using Elon Musk and Sheryl Sandberg.
When Elon Musk is combative or mocks pronouns, the press universally labels him toxic and dangerous. His assertiveness is pathologized. But when Sheryl Sandberg implemented strict ideological screening at Meta and pushed out dissenters, she was praised as a visionary, assertive leader.
So how are men reacting to this minefield?
The reaction is quantifiable. Riker cites a Stanford finding that 43% of young men, aged 25 to 40, haven't been on a single date in over 2 years.
The media usually frames that as an incel crisis. Does Riker buy that?
He vehemently rejects the incel narrative. He frames this mass withdrawal as a highly rational risk assessment. Men look at the risk of false accusations, ruined reputations, financial ruin in family court, and they simply conclude the juice isn't worth the squeeze.
The logical move is to refuse to play. It's a terrifying stalemate. Society demands complete docility from men. But Riker points out a glaring hypocrisy, because when a crisis hits, all that progressive language evaporates, and society demands men revert to lethal protectors.
He calls this disaster patriarchy.
Disaster patriarchy, Section 5. This is intense.
It's the core pillar of his geopolitical argument. Disaster patriarchy is the immutable expectation that men are the disposable shock absorbers of civilization. Progressive society wants to dismantle traditional masculinity in peacetime, but desperately relies on it to bleed and die during a crisis.
The most obvious example is the military draft.
The U.S. Selective Service System remains a male-only registry. 16 million young men legally required to be ready to face violent death. Riker notes the profound silence from equality advocates on this. No feminist marches demanding the equal opportunity to be blown apart by artillery.
He brings up 9/11 as the ultimate modern example.
343 firefighters died running up the stairs of burning towers. All men. Society didn't care about their male privilege in that moment. They were heroes precisely because of their traditional masculine strength and willingness to sacrifice. Yet today, those same traits are labeled toxic masculinity.
He mentions the Copiapo mining disaster in Chile, too.
33 miners trapped underground for 69 days. All men. Because deep vein mining is a brutal, high-risk profession, society universally accepts will be performed exclusively by men.
And Riker grounds all of this in biology, the leadership hormone stack.
He identifies a trio of biological factors: testosterone, vasopressin, and the structural function of the male amygdala.
What do those actually do in a crisis?
Testosterone drives physical strength and risk tolerance. Vasopressin is involved in pair binding and territorial defense. Combined with the male amygdala, which processes threat detection differently, Riker claims you have a neurochemical machine evolutionarily optimized for protection and crisis management.
So you can't socialize that out without destroying society's ability to survive.
Exactly. He points out the irony of spending billions medicalizing these hormones in boys, only to desperately demand those exact functions when the ship starts sinking.
Literally sinking, like the Titanic.
The classic women and children first protocol. 800 men died in the freezing water, so over 500 women could survive in lifeboats.
And the modern equivalent, the Allen floods in Germany. This was wild.
The 2021 floods. Rescue helicopters prioritized pulling women, and in some cases, women carrying their pets into the helicopters before rescuing the men, literally clinging to chimneys.
A dog prioritized over a human male.
That's how he interprets it. Men are placed at the bottom of the protection hierarchy, but the absolute top of the risk hierarchy.
A schizophrenic demand. So we've covered the suppression in schools, the concrete floor, family court traps, linguistic minefields, and disposable sacrifice. This brings us to section 6, the male exodus. How are men responding? They aren't marching in the streets.
No, the rebellion is absolute withdrawal, opting out of the systems designed to exploit them. He cites Pew Research, showing over 30% of men under 30 are single by choice.
And the withdrawal extends to friendships, the death of the third space.
Traditional fraternal organizations like the Elks Lodge have seen membership plummet. Sociological data shows 34% of modern American men report having zero close confidants. No one to call in a crisis.
But the exodus isn't just isolation, it's building parallel structures, like the Child Access Patrol in Ohio.
A grassroots group of fathers granted legal visitation, but denied access by ex-wives with no police enforcement. They teamed up, wore body cameras to custody handoffs, and publicly documented the violations, creating accountability outside failing institutional channels.
And the fraternal economy in Texas.
Networks of tradesmen plumbers, electricians bartering high-value skills off the books, operating outside the taxed economy because they believe their taxes fund the institutions disenfranchising them.
He mentions physical spaces too, like Brothers Keep in Canada.
Off-grid cabin networks that are strictly male-only, sanctuaries to disconnect from the digital noise and rebuild physical and psychological strength.
And geopolitical examples, like Viktor Orban's Hungary.
Riker views Orban's policies as successful macro-level implementation, banning gender studies programs, providing massive tax breaks for traditional family structures, raising the fertility rate, and contrasting sharply with Western institutional decay.
So what's his ultimate advice to the individual reader? He explicitly warns against the beta male trap.
He argues men who try to be the perfectly deconstructed feminist ally are ignored professionally and dumped romantically by women who biologically desire competence and strength.
Instead, he advocates for alpha circles.
Private, highly vetted networks of high-performing men teaching each other financial strategy and physical discipline.
And he lays out 3 specific calls to action: the trade revival, the red pill resume, and the honor points app.
The trade revival urges young men to skip 4-year universities and their debt and enter high-paying trades like plumbing or cybersecurity. The red pill resume is stripping ideological markers and focusing strictly on objective competence.
Refusing the corporate DEI game, and the honor points app.
A theoretical concept to replace the feminized validation of Instagram likes. A system that rewards real-world sacrifice, duty, and physical capability. a reclamation of male honor.
It is a massive, heavy text. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground, which leaves us with a lot to process.
Based on everything Riker outlined, there is a crucial question to leave the listener with today.
I agree. Here's the final thought I want you to mull over. If Riker is right, and the ultimate male rebellion is simply starving the system, withdrawing labor from the concrete floor, refusing marriage, avoiding the taxed economy, and building a parallel fraternal economy, what does the collapse of the mainstream system look like in real time? If the men who keep the infrastructure running simply stop participating, will society eventually be forced by sheer material reality to renegotiate the social contract with men? Or will it stubbornly double down on the very ideologies the author is critiquing, even as the system crumbles? It's a profound question to consider as you watch the cultural landscape shift around you. Please remember to like and subscribe to this deep dive so we can keep bringing you these extensive breakdowns. And once again, you can buy this highly influential ebook, Real Men Pushback. Say No to Feminist Marxist Nonsense by Conrad Riker right now on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books. Be sure to follow the author on Substack at Conrad and Riker for more of his unfiltered content. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and we will see you on the next deep dive.